On Sunday, the 9th of August in North Kensington, a demonstration took place against the police, which degenerated into totally inexcusable violence. There may be some who believe that they have been the victim of injustice at the hands of the police. Others who, like parasites, feed on these beliefs and seek to turn them to their own advantage, deliberately creating hate and violence. These defendants are all guilty of the serious criminal offense.
This attack on a black establishment is not an isolated event, but a sustained campaign against black people. And today we are saying enough is enough.
Hey, Adam, how you doing?
Malachi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Where are you?
I am in a little apartment in central London.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Oh, very good. How far from Notting Hill is that?
Oh,
Good
question. I'd say about maybe 20 minutes, half an hour drive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's such a sprawling city, but that's 20 minutes is mostly due to traffic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's been a while. I've been to London many times, but years back, and I haven't been there a while, and I miss it. I miss my trips there.
Okay, where are you from?
New York.
Okay.
I'm a little north of the city right now, in a safe area north of New York City. So.
Okay,
but,
nice.
Yeah.
New York today and how COVID must be affecting the.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast. I'll invite you onto that in due time. I don't want to neglect our film here, but yeah, it's well, because I haven't been able to visit. I would say that these small acts films are, especially Mangrove, bring me back closest to the feel of London and of England, for obviously for better or for worse, but than almost anything I've seen in a long time. I mean, it's got the way that he shot this is just transports one right to the time and place, very successfully. I don't know if you. Of course, you live there, so you have a different experience with it. But you weren't even probably, you're definitely not born when these movies take place, right?
No, I wasn't. If it wasn't for my mom, then these films would be entirely foreign. But I have my mom kind of, she shared with me references of what it was like growing up. And, she used to listen, she still listens to Lovers Rock, that wasn't the episode I was in, but that time period, the music and the food is the same. The costumes I've seen looking at pictures when my mom was a kid. So it definitely rang true for me being involved.
Did your mom grow up in London too then? Close to that time frame?
Yeah, she grew up in South London.
So that as you're saying, that must have been a very big help to you in terms of the kind of due diligence, your research, your work, preparing.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely was picking her brain about some things, and the music she was listening to at the time and how she would dance at the time. Like if, little words that she would use at the time to, like you have like slang and just common day slang and just, yeah, I was definitely picking her brain and looking through old photos. I was looking at so much photos actually for this, because I find them they just kind of bring you into, a whole other period of time, where you just have photos that weren't posed, just people that, didn't know that we'd be looking at them 30 years later. You can just kind of have a little kind of fly on the wall moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was going to say your character is part of a group of young people who are actively protesting and in fact against their parents' wishes. Their parents in this film, Mangrove, seem to kind of, with some exceptions, they seem to really be obviously very cautious about pushing back too hard Is that fair to say? Whereas the young folks in the film are really, really angry and have had enough of police brutality and, see like the future as possibly they want it to be a fair future for them to grow up in. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I think one of the things that struck me about, this particular battle that the Mangrove Nine were facing, especially for Darkus and especially for Althea, was this awareness that this fight wasn't just for themselves, that they were coming together for the unborn child, as Althea's character says,
Right.
for me, essentially, for the people that were to come that he didn't know existed yet. And that was part of what strengthened them to keep going for 11 weeks in a trial, knowing that they were already on the right side of justice and having to fight this case that should have just not happened in the first place. Yeah, that definitely, I would say that rings true.
You must know that the film is resonating for American audiences.
I would hope so. I think that there is this idea, kind of possibly even globally, that, the civil rights and this kind of Black Lives Matter movement, and even the Black Panther movement, it only happened in the US, and that's because most of the stories that we hear happen in the US. And, it was happening in the UK too. It was happening in Trinidad. It was happening across the globe. And so I'm glad that there is a light being drawn to these stories now, in that there is a united effort that's been happening, as long as it's been happening.
Yeah. I mean, the movie deals with police brutality, right? Specifically, the opening of this restaurant. Why do you suppose the restaurant proposed such a threat to like the local police with the white, almost entirely white police force? Why was the restaurant such a threat? Did it, what do you think it symbolized?
Change.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it. So something different.
It was owned by, right? It's owned by a West Indian Brit.
Yes.
Right. So that's what is that what you're getting at?
Well, no, I mean, not even just that, but just the idea of something different. I mean, I could never speak for those police officers, truly, but I think that there was a fear of change, of something. You have those conversations where they're talking about, it's okay that you have a restaurant, but just make the same food that we usually eat. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I see. Yeah.
The idea of having something different put a fear in them for some reason, I guess because of the power of culture, and the influence of culture. And I think it's for me personally, I think it's entirely irrational, of course. But yeah, I think that they were just scared of change, not necessarily something bad, just something different.
Yeah, and I think I didn't even think along just the fact that it's ethnic food. It's like this is not how we do things here, right? That could propose a threat. But it's interesting because I mean that is definitely resonating here because in this country now, the totality of ethnic groups, what we call minorities, are now the majority of the country. So there's a certain percentage of the population that feel very threatened by that, and hence I think what you're seeing in this country is was a reaction to that. So when I was watching the movie, I was thinking, my God, it's like this really is like says it all, What,
yeah, for sure. I mean, we filmed this last year summer, and I had no idea. I don't think anyone had any idea of what was going to happen this year, in terms of the marches and COVID and everything. And
sure, right.
So there is a particular resonance, although this conversation isn't new, it's definitely very prevalent right now. So we had no idea that we'd be entering into this time when we were about to share this film, but I think it's definitely brought about a whole new excitement to be able to share something like this at this time. I think it's kind of any filmmaker's dream to have something that's resonating. Right,
of course. I hope people see it. I hope people see the film. I'm going to try to do my tiny little bit for that. But now a question I have to assume, I'm going to assume you were familiar with Steve McQueen's films.
Yes, for sure.
So
Favorite directors.
mine too. I remember meeting him in the New York Film Festival after watching the first big feature that came. Now I'm going to blank for some reason.
Hunger?
Say again?
Is it Hunger?
Hunger, thank you. Sorry about that, Steve. I was so blown away by it. And I thought, my God, this is a filmmaker to watch for. He's going to be an important filmmaker. And so you when did he come on your radar? And could you have ever imagined that one day you'd be cast in one of his films?
I definitely imagined that I'd be cast.
You did. That was a thing.
Imagined in the sense of it was in my imagination that I'd love to be one day. You know, if we found the right story to tell together. How soon it would be, I didn't know. But you know, yeah, I mean, Hunger for me was also the film that brought him onto my radar. I was having a conversation with someone. They just told me I needed to watch it, and so I did. And then he was just stuck with me without knowing. You know, I watched 12 Years a Slave, I watched Widows, I watched Shame. And every single one of his stories were just so, they just resonated with me. And just the integrity of and truth in them, and the silences in them, the way he filled space with them, his art. It was just exciting. There was no like mediocre scenes for me. And it rings true when I got to meet him. Like, he doesn't do small talk, you know, whether you're on set or off set, like the words matter. It's like, let's talk about something that matters. You know, when I went into the first audition with him, the first thing he spoke about was Grenfell, you know. It wasn't, hey, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, you know, so Grenfell, like, where was you when that happened? Like, how did that make you feel? We went straight into it. And that's how he is. And it was so exciting to work with a director like that, who cuts out all of the rubbish in a script and just goes, look, let's just get to the heart of the moment and scrap everything else, because what else matters, you know? Yeah, it's been a joy for sure.
How much was he involved in working on the character of Darkest How with you? And what was that like? What were those conversations like?
You know, one of the beautiful things genuinely about working with Steve is that as much as he is a visionary, like, he knows exactly what he wants, but he hardly directed me, if I'm honest. He hardly directed anyone. You know, we get on set and he just lets us play, and he moves us around every now and then. But I think for me, that was one of the most beautiful experiences I've had as an artist, where I actually got to be an artist and express and have ownership of a character. And I think, you know, it was for all of us involved in the cast. He approached us in that same way. He was like, you know, he created the environment. He created, you know, he put everything in the room and said, here's your toys, play. And I'll catch it. You know, I'll get the cameras, we'll move around you, and we'll catch it, but just be. And for me, that's one of the best approaches I've had working with a director, because it's not that he didn't know what he was doing, you know. And there were some scenes where, you know, there was a specific thing he wanted to do with the camera. So he'd move us very specifically and said, you know, excuse me, but can I just work with me on this? But for the most part, we just played and he caught it.
Wow. Sounds like trust plays a big part there, because it sounds like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe he did a lot of preparation and chose his actors extremely carefully, so that way he could put you in the room to play and trust that you guys would know what to do. And it's okay to fail, even if you trust your actors. I mean,
yeah, for sure. And I mean, the other thing is we're shooting on film, you know, so it wasn't like we're on digital where we could do a whole bunch of takes over and over again. So
precious film, yeah.
Yeah, you know, we had 2-3 takes max. Usually it was one take, and it's like, okay, we got it, let's move on. But prior to getting on set, he had already created that environment. You know, he'd already given us his energy. You know, and it was for all of us. It was like, either give 100%, 110%, or just go home. You know, why are you going to be here and not give everything that you have? And he gave everything that he had, and that was infectious. You know, not just for the cast, but also for the crew. Everyone was running around, sweating, giving every single moment all that we could. And so, yeah, I think that really helped to build the trust that we had in the atmosphere.
Were you curious? What did you know much about what was going on with the other parts of the series, the other films? There's 5 of them, I believe, as
Yeah,
part of this.
there's 5 in total, and I was definitely curious. I didn't get to read the scripts, but I spoke with the producers when we were on set, and just like, Lovers Rock, like education, like what's happening, what's it about, what's it about?
Did you wish you were in Lovers Rock after you heard about that one? I bet you did.
No, my mom would have loved me to be in Lovers Rock. I know that much.
Well, I was riveted. I mean, I was watching at the New York Film Festival in my, back here.
Yeah.
And I have a large screen around the corner. You can't see it there, but I was so excited to close the curtains and watch the films. And the only bad part is it's alone. I was alone, but I was like a gift every time I got one of those Steve McQueen films, to be able to immerse myself in that experience. And it's a new world to watch these West Indian characters and their, the stories, but at the same time, something, as I was saying at the beginning, that was almost like a documentary in the sense of I was really watching these incredibly convincing scenes, and the courtroom scenes in Mangrove, same experience. I felt very, very transported, I don't know how else to describe it, but given to your acting and your fellow cast members.
No, thank you. And I think it's also, costume as well. Like that's one of the first things for me in terms of getting into character is the costume, and
right.
You put that on and it's like, regardless of all the work that you've done, if the costume isn't right, it can just, for me, spoil the whole thing. And I put those clothes on and I felt like I was putting on my dad's clothes, like straight away. My culture is like, my heritage is Jamaican. I was born in London. My dad is Jamaican. And so, although, you have 2 different cultures here, definitely in terms of Trinidadian and Jamaican, there is a united thing in terms of the Caribbean. So, yeah, to jump straight into that, to have the food on set, the smell of the food, it does something, I think.
Well, I was going to ask you, that was my next question about the catering.
Yeah.
I mean, catering.
Between me and you, the catering, as opposed to the food we got to eat when we were in character, was very different.
Okay.
But yeah, the food that we actually had, when we were doing scenes and we were in the restaurant, that was beautiful. Yeah, and it was the food that I eat back home,
Jerk. Yeah, see, when we use the term jerk in this conversation, it means something very different.
Yeah. Jerk chicken, that's my thing, man.
Oh, that sounds good. And last question, I think we're getting down to the wire, but I did want to ask you, since you brought it up earlier, and that is your mother, and maybe your parents more generally. How did they feel when they saw the film, and what was their reaction?
Okay. Well, yeah, I brought my mum with me to the premiere. She watched it with me. She sat down. She definitely had a few tears. I brought my auntie as well. And yeah, her and my grandma, I think, were the people that I wanted to share this with the most. Because of all the projects that I've done, this, I think, is the closest to an experience that they've had and shared. And yeah, my mom, I mean, she's my mom, so she's always proud of me. But I think this one definitely affected her more so than other projects that I've done in terms of.
And the authenticity, her feelings about the authenticity. Did Steve get it right?
For her, I remember her saying, she, I think I'm really looking forward to her seeing Lovers Rock. But even with the Mangrove, and the party scenes and where we dressed up, she's like, yeah, like in the music in it, she was like, yeah, I used to listen to these tunes when she got raving or whatever. So yeah, that was a real joy to be able to share that with her.
Well, congratulations. Malachi Kirby is one of the cast members of Mangrove. It's going to be, I believe, available on Amazon Prime on November 20th, if I've got my details straight. Part of this whole series, and I recommend it. I think it's just wonderful series of films. So congratulations, and I hope we can do this again under other circumstances as well, maybe in person one day, maybe in the UK. I don't know.
That'd be great. I'll come over and give you a hug someday.
Nice meeting you.
You too. Take care.
You too. Good luck.